First of all, hi everybody out there in computer land. Don't you be doing funky things with my head, putting it on a naked body or anything like that. Don't want you to do that. I'm watching you. Destiny is an album that pretty much the title says it all. I think that eventually looking back and examining where we are in our music now, we're pretty much destined to do this kind of album. It's taken a long process of growth, both for us as musicians and as artists, and for our fans as well, that have followed us through many different kinds of incarnations, as with Mi Tierra and Abriendo Puertas, the Spanish albums. And we haven't done really a studio album for 5 years, an original English language album. And what this album has done, Destiny, is kind of combined all of our experiences up to the present with those really Latin albums that had such great success worldwide. And really thank everybody for that, by the way, for supporting us as usual through all our endeavors. Well, Destiny is about a combination of all these, basically very Afro-Cuban percussive music bed. But rather than Mi Tierra, that was really a nostalgic piece about a certain time, we brought it into the 90s and used different effects and different sounds combined with this very traditional Afro-Cuban percussive bed. So Destiny really is has got some really interesting fusions on it. We've got rhythms from Colombia, from Cuba, from the Antilles. It's not just Afro-Cuban, it's Afro-Antillean, I would say. A little calypso even in there. Big giant conga from Street Party from Cuba, conga from Cuba. And of course, a lot of ballads, but done in an interesting percussive way. All Latin American music is pretty much African in its base. When the slaves were taken to Europe, and then Europe in turn found Cuba and a lot of the islands in the Antilles, they brought a lot of the Africans with them, who in turn created incredible rhythms and music, and through their religion, the African religion, and Cuba eventually became known as Santeria because it was a mix of the African religion with Catholicism, which was forced onto the slaves by the law. And basically very African in its percussion, and then mixed in with the European feeling, not only from Spain, but from France and England as well. And in Cuba, this mix flourished into what is now called Afro-Cuban music, and that is that mix of European and African percussion. At the beginning of Afro-Cuban music, in other words, a fusion of the African with the European, Africans had festivals that would last sometimes 3 days, where they would get together with drums and improvise, solely improvise around different rhythms. And from these rhythms, Afro-Cuban music came. They were very percussive rhythms that were combined then with European music. And we came out with danzón, which was actually very European courtesan dance mixed with African rhythms. And the cha-cha, eventually the mambo, of which Cachao Israel Lopez was a big part of the creation of some of these rhythms, or the modernization of these rhythms. The title track, Destiny, is actually basically a percussive rhythm used in the Afro-Cuban religion of Santeria, which was the voodoo mixed in with the Catholicism that the Africans brought from Africa, and the Europeans obviously forced Catholicism on the Africans by law. And they would sing, they would have reunions or masses or a type of party called a bembe, where they were actually praising. It would be like a mass where they would praise the different gods. Destiny is a rhythm that was used for Elewa, Elewa being a very mischievous kind of god that would originally in Africa was the god of eroticism, although when he went to Cuba things got toned down a bit and the erotic part of it was kind of toned down, and he became more of a mischievous god, a messenger, let's say. And this particular rhythm that is used in Destiny is offered up in honor of Elewa, this particular orisha, or an entity that was a messenger from the gods to normal man. And in these parties, these bembes, people are actually channeling the gods, and they come and give you messages, tell you about your future, about your past, whatever. And even though I don't practice this religion, obviously the music is one of the richest parts of Cuban culture, and all of actually Caribbean and Latin American culture is this very strong African base. In a song that I wrote for my daughter Emily called Along Came You, we have a fabulous South African bass player named Batiki who played on Graceland as well, but he sang me a Zulu lullaby, which I really loved and have included a little portion of it in Emily's song, and it says, Tula Tula Sana Umama Uyeza, which means don't cry baby, and mommy is coming. And then you're also going to hear in that song the debut of my daughter Emily, who I was singing the song. I was going to do her cut, so I brought her into the studio with me, and we had candles in the room, and every time she sees a candle, she sings happy birthday, so she started singing happy, happy mama. I told them to put on the tape, and you're going to be able to hear some of Emily's first words also in throughout Emily's song. The song Reach, which was written with the Olympics in mind, but obviously when they asked me if I wanted to write something for that, it was kind of a daunting task, so I put it on the back burner and started to fret about it, but not really work on it. And then my good friend Diane Warren, who's a wonderful writer, came into town. She found out that they had offered me to do something for the Olympics, and she came with the title, which was Reach. She had written nothing else, but she knew that I was doing something for the Olympics, and I thought, it's a fabulous title. We sat down, actually wrote it in 15 minutes, and even though it's from very personal experience, obviously my own, from having that Olympic-like recovery from the accident, it really was like almost being in training, so I can kind of feel a little bit what the athletes went through. It's really a personal power message behind this song, and I think that when we look at the Olympians, we really see human beings at their best, at their physical best, at their the best discipline, the most perseverance, because to get to the spot where they are really takes a lot from deep inside. And that's what Reach does. It celebrates the possibility that we all have to strive to be the best that we can possibly be, and how to really gear up your mind and your heart to try to achieve these things. It was really important for us on this album to use instruments, as we did in Mi Tierra, that are really folkloric instruments that are used in Afro-Cuban or Afro-Antillian music. So we did. There's a lot. We've used tortoise shells that are hollowed out and played on top of big jugs of water. We had Chembo, who is a specialist in this Afro-Cuban religion, Lukumi, to actually do it the correct way and use things where they're supposed to be. He brought a reed that he played on a drum skin, which you hear at the beginning of Destiny, you hear it at the beginning of Path of the Right Love, and he's actually just pulling down on the reed with his hands wet, and the reed is hitting an African drum head, so you hear this drone. And then you hear Chembo himself, and you hear him scattered throughout the record so that you know who he is. He's and what he is saying is blessings for everyone in Lukumi language. Lukumi meant actually my friend in the Yoruba tribe language from Africa, but that became known as a word for that entire religion. They call it Lukumi. So that's what you hear him saying throughout the different songs, and what they really are blessings in the Yoruba language. There's also a song that I wrote called Path of the Right Love that is very close to my heart. A lot of my little musings on God and spirituality. And there's a little surprise in there thrown in the B section, one of the B sections. You're going to hear a prayer. You don't actually hear it, but if you really bend your ear, you'll be able to make out what it's saying. And to me, it was almost like a prayer throughout the song that's being said. So every time the song gets played, this prayer is being said. And it's not to any particular religion. It's to God, who I feel is totally non-denominational, by the way. So that's another little interesting thing to listen for on the album, as well as Chembo in throughout each and every cut, throwing blessings your way.